I'm Richard Pyatt. This is the Kindness Marketing Podcast. Don Renshaw is the founder of Stony Creek Social Media. We talk about the elements of kindness. In fact, if this is the first episode you're hearing, you may wish to go back because we started really digging in a little bit to the notion of kindness and some aspects of that. And now we've been branching off a bit, talking about different things through which an element of kindness can exist and be useful. Welcome back, Dawn.
Thank you, Richard.
Today we're talking about kindness in internal marketing. What is internal marketing anyway?
It's, emails back and forth with clients. We use a software called Basecamp and, anything that we do. And I also look at it somewhat like employee birthdays or employee anniversaries or how you talk about your employees on your social media and other marketing avenues.
Mm-hmm. So the social media component, and I say social media, but like Basecamp and other platforms through which employees might interact with one another, have a hand in setting the tone of the culture. True?
Exactly. One of the things I learned early on, because I wasn't brought up as an entrepreneur. My parents weren't entrepreneurs, nobody in my family. So I kind of got thrown into the water, so to speak. And one of the things that I saw lacking was employers being kind to their employees. I'm not saying that they were not nice to their employees, but being kind, because the way I saw it from the very beginning was my employees are my customers. And so in order for them to show my customers, our customers, kindness, I need to show them kindness. It goes back to, one of the things when my children were small, if I would be at the park and a child would hit another child and the parent would hit that child and say, don't hit them. And I'm like, you just hit them and you're telling them not. And so, often people, children, I will say people, they see more, they learn more from what they see than from what they hear. So, if you are kind to your employees, then they are going to in turn be kind to your customers.
Oh, think about that. So I was landing in the zone of helping employees understand their value, which I suppose is part of this. But this is an interesting flow you've just pointed out. If I feel valued or kind, that I'm being treated kindly, I'm going to do the same.
Yes. Yes.
Wow.
That's my belief, and that's what I've been doing for 17 years. And also, there's things that, like I said, we've talked in previous episodes about the difference between being nice and being kind. So, when I had an employee whose grandmother passed away, and I said, take a week off, we're all good. And he came back and said, my mom was very close to her mom, and she's really struggling because now we have to move my grandmother's stuff from the long-term care facility.
Mm.
He said, is there any way I can take like the morning off to help her move? And I said, you know what? I said, I think you need to take another week off.
Oh my.
And people, I'm sure people were like, but that's just what I felt the right thing to do was, and we've talked offline a little bit about, Austin, one of my employees, he also freelances and does some stuff with the Bassmaster Elite series. And it's probably going to be hard for people to hear, but Austin's been with me 6 years. It'll be 7 in June. He gets 6 weeks paid vacation, and that's hard for people to hear. And it's things where, employees have come to me and said, this is going on in my personal life. This is happening here. And I'll be like, take the rest of the day off. Or, there's just different things that have come up where, a certain financial situation has happened and, I've advanced their pay where people are like, and it's funny because my business art friends is like, don't get in the habit of that, don't do that, presidents, they're going to take advantage of it, and I really lead from my heart and what I feel like I should do. And that's something that I get ridiculed on them. You're too nice to your employees. but it's something that, the world can be rough. And so there's, situations where, I had one employee who, broke their contact. They had the hard contact, and they had to be special made. So they couldn't drive. And so, they couldn't come into the office. So it was like, okay, we'll figure it out. And that's just what we do. But, I see often people will have a lot of turnover with employees. There's different things that happen. I'm very fortunate that I haven't had that, but it does take a lot on my part where, reach out and say, "Hey, what's happening in your life? How can I help you?" We have monthly staff meetings, we have weekly Zoom meetings, and we start out, and it's kind of funny because we talk about business high and a personal high, like business best, personal best. And, sometimes it takes 15 minutes to go through that little segment, but it's just neat to know like what's going on in their life. Every now and then I'll reach out on base camp and I'll just say, "Hey, how can I pray for you today?" Um, Another funny thing, I was in the office and Natalie was getting her wedding dress altered across the hall. There's a seamstress. And when she left, I said, "Love you." And my customer was like, "Do you always tell your employees that you love them?" I'm like, "Yeah, don't you?" Yeah. And somebody said before, like, "Isn't that an HR violation?" I'm like, "I am HR, so we're all good."
Well, so I was about to bring that up. The idea that the culture of some organizations could be different, of course, right?
Right, right,
But
right.
you're setting the tone because you are HR. But I mean, if you
Mhm,
have the
right, right.
opportunity to help set the tone this way, the kindness element can be a foundation for that.
Right, right, and I had some positions open, and I've interviewed people. We've probably spoke a dozen times at Western, either one or the other of us or the whole group of us. And so, when we have a job opening, we get a lot of the kids from Western are like, "I remember when you were in," or I've been at an event before where someone's come up and said, I'm like introduced myself like, "Oh, we know who you are. You have the best culture of any company and that we've ever heard of." And yeah, and it's fun. I'm on the board for the AMA, the American Marketing Association, and we have monthly events. And my team all shows up, all decked out in their Stony Creek merch. But yeah, I have to be out of town for the big event coming up this month, and my team will be there, and they know that they can count on them to carry things in, carry things out, and we're just known as really being kind, and that means the world to me.
And that is the example, one of them, of how internal kindness will permeate externally.
Mhm,
Yeah.
mhm,
Are some people trepidatious about that and say, people might take advantage of me? What do you
mhm,
say to
mhm.
that?
I have that, and I kind of go back to the point is it's like they have a conscience and will have to deal with that. There has been a few times where I feel like maybe it it might be on the edge of like, okay, is someone really taking advantage of this? And a lot of times, I'll have that conversation and just from a loving, kind point of view and just say, it's come to my attention that I feel like this might be happening. Can you just clarify to me what's actually happening? But also, you have one thing I feel like I've earned with my approach to my employees is a level of respect that I have never ever encountered in any type of workplace environment.
Well, there's another byproduct of
Mhm,
this approach, right? It stimulates a two-way understanding here
mhm.
and that feeling of being valued, so they will value you.
Right. Right. Yep. And like I said, the birthday shout outs and the anniversary shout outs on online. And, we tend to have a lot of fun together and do fun things. And that really, people want to do business with people who are kind and fun and caring. I can't, if you would go through our Google reviews, a lot of them talk about, one of our core values other than kindness is going above and beyond, which to me is kindness. But you know, uh, we do it all the time.
So, if someone is wondering, Dawn, am I
Mhm.
am I doing enough internally to
Mhm.
employ the notion of kindness in what we do, how can they evaluate that? How do you know?
One of the things I talk about is that one-to-one communication, I have a one-to-one with 3 of my employees, 3 of my full-time employees, and every week. So that's 3 hours out of my week every single week. Then once a month we have the staff meeting where they come in, and it's usually 3 or 4 hours, and I buy them lunch and, again, things I don't have to do. And I don't want this to make in any way think that I'm bragging on myself, because I'm not. This is something that my parents taught me from an early age up, that that other people matter and what you do for people. And through the part of my life when I was a single parent, a lot of people stepped up and helped me that didn't have to. They
Mm.
weren't relatives of mine. And so you learn through the different ebbs and flows of your life that there are times when you need somebody to be kind, and somebody shows up. And there are times that you see people, whether they're an employee of yours, a customer of yours, a total stranger, that if you can show up for them, you don't know what type of a ripple effect that will have in their life. And that's one of the things about kindness that I look at. I had someone come to me, not to get too far off the beaten path, but came to me. It was a young man who lived next door to me and the girls when I first went through my divorce. And he was like 10 years younger than I was, and he had two young girls. And every now and then we always remind me of that Tim the Toolman Taylor, the fence. And we had the wooden fence, and we'd go up there and talk. And I saw him like 5 years later, and he said, because of you, he said, I am sober today.
Oh
I had
my.
no idea he was even suffering with that. But he said, Dawn, he goes, sometimes when I thought I needed a drink, I would go out in the backyard and you would be there and you would talk to me. And he said, it really helps. So you never know at the time what type of an effect. And I do know that I have an employee that came to me and said, he goes, because of you and because of Stony Creek, I'm nicer to my parents. I'm nicer to my girlfriend. I'm nicer to people in the grocery store. And that's a win for me.
No kidding. Wow. To have people come back to you
Mhm.
and recount that feeling and how it helped them, hello, that cements the whole feeling that you had about it.
Right. And think if everybody could just be this much kinder. Just think about how the world, I sound like this little girl with, the pie in the sky and, my little sign, but that's the way I truly feel and anybody I think that truly knows me knows that that's the way I feel, is that if everybody was just this much kinder, what the world would be like.
And maybe that's what we leave folks with this time. What does this much kinder mean to you? Maybe it's a one on one with an employee this week, or developing the process by which you acknowledge their birthdays, or some such thing that allows them to feel valued. The kindness is a big part of that, the kindness component. All right. Maybe, Dawn, is your wheels turning about some of these things. In the show notes, contact information, check it out. Maybe reach out to Dawn and ask her. Say, kind of thinking about what you said, but I don't know if I quite know how to get there. She'll have an answer for you after that initial conversation. Kindness Marketing Podcast. That's what this is. We invite you to subscribe or follow, depending on where you are, listening, watching. We're glad you found us. Dawn Renshaw, founder of Stony Creek Social Media. We'll see you again soon.
Bye.